Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Rock at the What's Up Falcons podcast, and I'm joined with my boys. My boys in the house. Where you at?
Yeah. What up?
Oh, gee, and we have Q, and we have Hoop in the house.
Q's here, the most beloved guy in all of sports entertainment.
Indeed. Hey, y'all, we want to thank everyone for listening to us, and if you want to listen to some great Falcons information, check us out on the What's Up Falcons podcast. Right, fellas?
Right. Sir. Hey, we here every week, baby.
We keeping it real, so check us out there on Twitter. Holla. Peace.
Subscribe to the What's Up Falcons podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Listen to the What's Up Falcons podcast at whatsupfalcons.com.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. All you got to do, install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, lacrosse. Let's get this done. Get the OSG Sports app today.
Welcome to the College Football Debrief on the CFB on OSG with your host, the Online Sports Guys.
Tommy Palmer, thanks, and we're glad you're listening to the College Football Debrief on Spreaker, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. So let's start the show. John Wilkerson here with you. Anthony Goldman joins me a little later. It's time for toe to meet leather. College football begins Saturday, and it starts in the FCS at noon when Villanova and Colgate kick the season off at Andy Kerr Stadium in Hamilton, New York. You can watch that game on the CBS Sports Network. Then Youngstown State takes on Samford in Montgomery, Alabama in the FCS kickoff game at 3 p.m. Eastern. The big one, though, is Florida and Miami in Orlando. In a few minutes, we will be joined by the voice of the Miami Hurricanes, Joe Zagacki, to preview that big matchup. And your Week 0 nightcap, Arizona at Hawaii. Let's start with the Gators and the Hurricanes, and there is a familiarity factor between Florida head coach Dan Mullen and Miami head coach Manny Diaz. In 2010 and 2015, Diaz served as Mullen's defensive coordinator at Mississippi State. Here's Dan Mullen addressing the media this week, saying each has evolved as a coach, courtesy of the Florida Gators.
Manny was with me, and then he left for a couple years, came back. He was coaching different, a little different scheme. You know, had changed, had grown and changed things within what he's done, and I'm kind of the same way. From when he was with me last. I mean, we've changed a little bit of our scheme and how we do things. So, and I see that with him. He has too. So I think there is, it's not like, okay, hey, he's running the exact defense he was running 10 years ago, and I'm running the exact same offense I was running 10 years ago in the 2010 season. So, or 9 years ago. So I think that part of it's changed, but there's still that personality that's going to be out there. That he'll understand a little bit of my style and personality of how we call plays, and him the same way.
Meanwhile, Manny Diaz brought in a former Hurricane head coach who not only has national championship rings during his Miami tenure, but a pair of Super Bowl rings from his days in Dallas. Jimmy Johnson talked to the Canes on Wednesday. Here's Manny Diaz reflecting on that, courtesy of Canes All Access.
You know what I think he did is that he drove home the point of what it means to play for the Miami Hurricanes, and how to prepare for games like this. Because I'm sure that they feel the same way. We're more concerned about us than them, and how to be mentally prepared for that type of setting.
While Felipe Franks enters his third season as Florida's starting quarterback, redshirt freshman Jaron Williams won the starting job at Miami. Here's Williams explaining how he went about earning respect as a team leader, courtesy of Canes All Access.
I feel like it's a gradual process because throughout the summer, the spring, my thing was I'm going to show these guys that I'm going to work and give everything I got for them. So, I go out there every day and I really give everything I had, empty the tank for them, just to show them that I'm going to be a guy that y'all can rely on. So I feel like doing that time after time gradually built that leadership. So then when I was had the opportunity to be named the starting quarterback, I was already kind of in that leadership role, so it was just kind of carried on.
And we now turn to an expert of all things Canes, Joe Zagacki, the voice of the Miami Hurricanes. And Joe, I'm curious, in the pecking order of college football games or rivalries within the Sunshine State, where does the Florida-Miami game rank?
Well, it would be ranked right near the top, except they don't play that often. This is the first time they played in 6 years. Now, in this state here in Florida, we like to pride ourselves on football from Pee Wee League through high school to college, and it's a bit absurd that two of the most powerful, dominating, giant programs in this state can't find a way to play more often. Now, after this game, they are going to play in 2024 and 2025, but when they did play between the years of 1934 and 1987, this rivalry probably was as good as any other in the country, and had they played in the 90s when Steve Spurrier was at Florida, it probably would have been equal to a Ohio State, Michigan, or North Carolina Duke in basketball rivalry, and I think they really missed out by not playing every single year.
Any particular Florida-Miami game that sticks out in your mind in the years that you've been doing the Canes?
Yeah, all of them. The last time they played, back in 2013, Stephen Morris had a big game from him. He had a couple of big passes to Philip Dorsett, and we thought that was a landmark victory for Al Golden. And then prior to that, in 2003, Miami trailed by 23 points in the Orange Bowl in the second half, and Brock Berlin rallied the Hurricanes to a huge win, a come-from-behind victory after trailing by 23. The following year, they played in the Peach Bowl, and Devin Hester had a punt return for a touchdown. Back in the early 2000s, 2002, Miami played in Gainesville. They went in ranked number 1, and Ken Dorsey and Willis McGahee and Andre Johnson just absolutely had tremendous games. A couple of other games that stand out real fast. In '86, anybody could YouTube this game. Miami and Florida played at Florida Field. It probably was one of the hardest hitting college games you will ever see. Had they played that game today, about every other play would probably be a 15-yard penalty. But there were some great players in that game. So many former NFL players: Alonzo Highsmith, Melvin Bratton, Vinny Testaverde, Michael Irvin, Louis Oliver, Jarvis Williams for Florida. Just tremendous players. In '81, Miami beat Florida on a Danny Miller 55-yard field goal, hit the upright and bounced through. Mark Richt had to come in late in the game for Jim Kelly and threw an 80-yard touchdown pass to a receiver named Rocky Belk, and then Danny Miller won the game. The rematch in '82 up there, Miami and Florida both were highly rated. Afternoon game in Gainesville, and James Jones made a catch for Florida, backpedaling into the end zone at the pylon. Many in Miami still feel that he was out of bounds on the play, but it was a tremendous win for Florida. And then Howard Schnellenberger in 1980 had a win over Florida. Miami was winning very late in the game, had the game at hand. Florida fans started throwing oranges onto the field to hit a couple of Miami players in the back of the head, and Howard Schnellenberger ordered the field goal team onto the field to kick a field goal, to rub it in their face. To run up the score, that was a big one. And then, of course, in the early 70s, Florida had the Gator flop, where they all fell down on the field, and John Reeves and the Gators scored a touchdown. And they allowed Miami to score a touchdown so that John Reeves would get the ball back to break a passing record. And then Florida celebrated by jumping into the pool with Flipper at the time. Flipper was in a pool in the end zone, and Florida celebrated by jumping in the pool. Flipper was there mainly for the Dolphins, but as a Dolphin mascot. But on a Saturday night, the Gators took a swim against Miami and celebrated that way. So yeah, there are a few memorable games in the series.
Yeah, that's remarkable recall, and along those lines, Joe, you've kind of challenged me to look up that '86 game on YouTube, and I think I'll be doing that this weekend to get me ready for Saturday night's game. Obviously, this is the lid lifter, the opener of the college football season. And what I'm finding out about college football is, with no preseason, I mean, that first game is so nerve-wracking, not only for the fans, but for the coaching staff and for the players. No roster. There's a roster turnover. You're dealing with 18 to 21-year-old boys becoming men. Do you think the opening game in college football is the biggest crapshoot in sports?
It's a good way to put it. It's one of them because so many things do change, and I don't think, unlike the NFL, you don't get any preseason games, so you don't really know what you have coming out of training camp. So execution usually is not as good as it would be late in the season. Usually these games are sloppy. Lately, these games also end up having someone getting thrown out for targeting. I think they call targeting more in the first week than any other week of the college football season. It happened to Miami last year. And then, of course, these first games, always about a half an hour before kickoff, somebody is announcing that several players have been suspended for the first game. So, crapshoot, yes, you're probably 100% right on that. These games are not usually the best played games of the year. Sometimes you get a great game, but often it gets slanted to one side because of either a suspension, someone getting thrown out, or the execution just isn't any good.
We're talking with Joe Zagacki, the voice of the Miami Hurricanes, and we're going to get now into the meat and potatoes of the matchup between Florida and Miami. And, of course, Jarren Williams was named starting quarterback last week. Did you have a chance to watch the quarterback battle in practice during fall camp? And if so, what was some observations you made about Jarren Williams that may have stood out?
Well, the quarterbacks didn't really separate themselves at all for the first couple of weeks. What always stood out, though, about Jarren and in the competition was his arm, and he would always flash with a big throw or an accurate throw or get hot in practice and hit several throws in a row. And so I think there was a temptation to look at Jarren and say, can he sustain it? Then there was a first scrimmage where there was a turnover. It wasn't his fault. It was a completed pass, but the receiver got dislodged from the ball. And most of the other players for Miami on the offense kind of just got caught ball watching. I forget who scooped it up, but they started to return it toward the end zone, and the one who made the tackle was Jarren Williams. And it's a play that Manny Diaz used over and over on film to show his team what hustle is about, what passion is about, what responding to a sudden change is about. It was Jarren Williams that had to drag down, I think it was a linebacker that was returning it, and made a heck of a play. And then a week later in the second scrimmage, the offense was stymied pretty much by the defense, but it was Jarren Williams that made a play, made a unique play, kept it alive, and threw a touchdown pass. And I think at that point, there was this big sigh of relief of, hey, I think we just found our quarterback. And so what stood out about him was his persistence and his accuracy, and hopefully it carries over not only into this game, but for the next 4 years.
Obviously, his first start is against an in-state rival on a neutral site, and college football atmospheres, especially first games, are always special. Is it important to build his confidence offensively the first 2 or maybe 3 series against Florida from Miami for that, to see if how that offense will be going forward?
Well, he's got to get out of those first couple of series without dirt on his jersey, and he's got to get out safe. No sacks, no turnovers, get out safe. And I think if he gets out safe, and however Miami figures out how to do that through the first 15 plays to figure out what's coming their way, I think Dan Enos will probably script it out to see what Florida's responding to. But I think those first 15 plays, whatever the results are, probably a 3-yard gain is going to be a good play, and then move from there. But he's got to get out of those first couple of plays with a clean jersey, and he's got to get out of those first couple of plays without throwing a pep rally for Florida at the beginning of the game.
Miami has a impressive set of linebackers. How are they a key for Miami going into the Florida game?
They bring leadership. They bring the ability to respond to adversity. They bring toughness. They bring passion. They're coaches on the field. You hope in this first game, tackling is always an issue, so you hope that they are sure tacklers. And then because they know the system, Quarterman has played 40 games. This will be his 40th game. Pickney is 39th. You can make your defense more complex and probably do a few more things defensively with your scheme. So they bring everything to the defense, everything into this game that seniors should bring. It's a luxury that Miami has not had the last couple of years. They've had way too many players leaving early. So finally, they bring back three guys that have been starters, that know the system, that know the importance of what Miami football is about in this town, and hopefully can respond in a very positive way.
We're talking to Joe Zagacki, the voice of the Miami Hurricanes on the College Football Debrief, and we're talking about Miami's upcoming game against Florida Saturday in Orlando. You know what late August are like in Florida. Fourth quarter, is somebody from the third string or fourth string maybe going to have to make a play for, I guess Miami to be successful or any team to be successful in this game?
Well, you never know. It's going to be sweltering. I imagine the heat is going to come hot, and it's going to come with a lot of grit on Saturday. And both teams have been working out in it it's a little bit different. Miami is 5 hours south of Gainesville, so the heat in both areas is pretty tough. Miami sometimes gets a little bit of an ocean breeze, pretty sweltering and humid in Gainesville. Both will say that their strength and conditioning coaches have done a great job. Both will say that they're built for that moment. So the only way we're going to know is when we get there and find out. And for Miami, we hope that it is a fourth quarter game and hope that the game is hanging in the balance as a 7 or 8 point underdog. Then I guess your next best hope is that you're in the game in the fourth quarter and that you can prove that you can still hold on to the rope throughout the fourth quarter and get to the finish line in a solid way. If a guy in the third team has to make a play, so be it. But I'm hoping that in the fourth quarter, that Miami's first team players are there and that they're in good enough condition that they're playing at a high level.
Most importantly for you, is the booth air conditioned?
It doesn't matter. We always have the windows open, whether it's 25 degrees or 110 degrees.
Yeah, I love it. You got to take in the atmosphere. Joe, where can the fans hear your broadcasts?
Well, around the state or locally, they can hear it on our flagship station, WQAM. We have an assortment of affiliates throughout the state of Florida. Nationwide, they can hear it on radio.com and just go to WQAM, which is the flagship station out of Miami, and radio.com will do the trick for you. That's one of the great radio apps throughout the country. So if you want to listen to the Hurricane side, radio.com is a good choice.
Let me give you a little ego boost here, because if you're driving around on a Saturday night and you need to listen to the radio broadcast, you guys have one of the best listens in college football. So I fully endorse what you guys are doing.
I appreciate that very much. Very kind of you. That's put a lot of work into it. My partner, Don Bailey Jr., and I, and we try to have fun. There are a few inside jokes there that we have to answer that our flagship station afternoon host set up for us, but try to bring some passion and have some fun with it. And if we're having fun, then I think the audience will have fun.
Well, Joe, I appreciate your time, taking time to educate us a little bit on Saturday's game, and we hope you guys have a great broadcast.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it.
And if you're heading to Orlando and need a ticket to the Florida-Miami game, well, try SeatGiant.com. When you check out, type in these letters, SDH. It helps you, and it helps us. That's SeatGiant.com. The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Get the OSG Sports app today. College football fans, check out the College Football Debrief. Here's a sample of what you get.
Let's say Mike Gundy has a couple of weeks in June and his wife comes to him and it's like, let's go on a vacation. You know, and most people when they go on vacation, they go to like the Bahamas or the beach, somewhere like that. I could see him being like, okay, let me book it. And they go to like a dude ranch in Montana. Like, that's what I picture.
Well, that's a good one. But I was thinking about, let's go to Cheyenne, Wyoming and check out the Cheyenne Frontier Days.
Yeah.
Or to Calgary, Alberta, to the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah, let's go to the Stampede. He's had to have gone to the Stampede, right? If he hasn't, he will one day. There's no doubt.
How many Stetsons do you think are in his closet?
Oh, he might have a whole closet for him. I say that. I don't know if he wears a Stetson because you can't make up the mullet.
That's true.
The mullet has to be free.
It's boots.
Yeah, the boots, yes. He has, if you watch him in all seriousness, he does have a different pair of cowboy boots on just about every single day.
You can catch the College Football Debrief on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Check out the College Football Debrief on the OSG Podcasting Network. And the College Football Debrief continues. We appreciate you listening to us on your favorite podcatcher, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher.com. And again, we appreciate you listening to our college football podcast, the College Football Debrief. Anthony Goldman is in the padded room with me. And Anthony, it's that time. We're talking games.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. I woke up early today. I've listened to like 9 hours of podcasts. I've only been up for 3 hours. I'm ready. This weekend cannot get here quick enough, John.
Okay, how many TVs are you going to have on once the season gets going in week 1?
So for week 1, not counting week 0,
yeah, because week 0,
usually
you're not going to utilize all the devices.
So what I've learned is I can watch 3 games at once and keep up with all 3. Like watch each play, go back and forth, and not feel like I'm missing any details. Once you get past 3 games, I get kind of lost. So usually it's 2 games, and then I start 2 for the noon kickoff slot, and then I graduate up to 3 games by prime time.
I usually have in my little office my TV going, I'll have my laptop going, and I'll have my Android phone. And I'll just kind of go back and forth. And I usually lock on to one game, but still kind of paying attention to the others.
Yeah.
3 is about the max I can do.
So
on
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And we were actually talking about this in the hallway the other day. I was talking with somebody else about this. I know you're more of an NFL guy than I am. I'm not a big NFL guy, full disclosure. So what I do is I'll watch games and I'll flip around on Saturdays, but I DVR a lot of games on Saturdays and watch them on Sunday. Even if I know the outcome, I want to see what happened. I want to see how the quarterback played, what was going on schematically. So I'll do that. So my Sundays are mostly college football viewing. Do you do that also? I don't even think I've ever asked you that.
Well, yes, I do watch more NFL. I watch certain teams.
Yeah.
And my 2 favorite teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs. Unless it's a really compelling matchup, I really don't pay much attention to it. But I don't DVR games. I will go to the ESPN app and watch some of the replays.
Yeah.
I'll find some on YouTube that have been replayed and put on. And I'll spend some Sunday time doing that. You can go through the commercials, or there's very few commercial breaks. So it makes it a lot more efficient to be able to sit there. And then, I in the morning on Sunday morning, and I'm an early riser, I will read some of the reporting, and I want to see what they're referring to. So I don't really watch a whole game. I'll watch bits and pieces of a game that I want to see why that such and such happened, or why a team rattled off 3 consecutive offensive touchdowns, that kind of thing. So when we get in here in the padded room, we can give our listeners the best breakdown possible.
So before we get to our actual breakdowns of the game, quick question, just on an estimate, on a Saturday, Sunday, not counting Friday, because I still think that's high school football's sacred night. So unless Washington State and USC is playing on a Friday, we're not going to count that.
With 11 o'clock kickoff.
Right. So an average weekend on a Saturday, Sunday, how many hours of college football do you think you consume?
Oh, my God. It's damn near 20. Probably more than that.
I would say between 28 and 32 hours is probably what I watch of games on a Saturday and a Sunday. Because
now I'll extend mine out to Monday and Tuesday when I get home from work.
Right.
When I finally have a chance to settle down, whatever I missed, I'm going to put on and watch.
Yeah. Yeah. There's at least 13 hours straight on Saturday.
But here's where I'm kind of probably a little stranger than you, Anthony, because if there was an outstanding FCS game, I'm probably going to watch that on a Monday or Tuesday or maybe Sunday as part of my viewing.
Yeah, see, I'll go the Sun Belt and the Coosa route, and you'll go the FCS route. So
I'll go the lower mid majors, yes, but I take it a step further.
Right.
I want to see a a Missouri Valley game or a Colonial game where somebody had a great game or there was a great moment. And I like the feel of the FCS.
Yeah.
I came from an FCS school, so I'm attracted to that part of football. All right, so now that you know our viewing habits and how we get ready,
I don't care. Let's
yeah,
talk
exactly.
football.
They want to talk football, so we've delayed you enough. Miami and Florida kick it off in Orlando on Saturday to break the ice of the college football season. And we heard from the voice of the Miami Hurricanes, Joe Zagacki, about where the pecking order is in the state of Florida of this rivalry. So, Anthony, after hearing those, do you kind of agree where this rivalry is in state?
Yeah, I think everybody wishes we see this game more, right? I mean, No one wants to see less of Florida and Miami. And the one odd thing about this rivalry is this is two teams that in the last 30 years have had rises of prominence, have had dynasties that have dominated college football, and yet they've never been at the top at the same time. So it's kind of odd, like with Florida State and Miami and Florida State, you had those runs in the 90s where the winner of that game was going to be catapulted into a national championship spot, whereas Florida and Miami, one of them's always down, which is kind of odd.
It is odd.
This year is an interesting one because Florida has the hype. They're a preseason top 10 team, but I'm going to be honest, John, I don't think the talent gap is as big as people think it is with these two teams. I think these two teams are closer talent-wise than what people really want to give them credit for.
Well, let's go with the Miami angle here because a lot of newness there.
Mm-hmm.
New head coach, Manny Diaz. He's a familiar face, former defensive coordinator, but this is a new role for him. And now he's in charge of the game plan. He's in charge of everything on the sideline. And you got a new quarterback coming in for Miami, and it's Jaron Williams. And it's kind of a surprise that he won the job. But when you read Manny Diaz's quotes, a lot of it has to do with he just had a better command of the passing game and a better command of the offense. That put him over the top of N'Kosi Perry and Tate Martell. This, as a redshirt freshman, this is really a big spotlight for him against Florida to start his college career.
Well, there's a lot to digest here. So, first of all, with Jaron Williams, this came out of left field to me. I did not see Jaron Williams being the guy. I personally thought it was going to be N'Kosi Perry because he had been in the system. And I felt like knowing what Dan Enos has done in the past, Perry looked like a Dan Enos quarterback. Jaron Williams is not your prototypical Dan Enos quarterback. He's a dual threat guy. He's very quick. He can hit the edge quick. He runs. Protects the ball from what we've seen, but we haven't seen much of him. He's very much an unknown. So that surprised me, especially against this Florida front. Both of these defenses in this game are better than the offenses in this game. And the key is going to be for both teams who can block the opposing defensive line. So maybe Jaron Williams' scrambling ability had a factor in this. Maybe that's one of the reasons why Dan Enos felt like that's who they should go with, but it surprises me that Jaron Williams, because when I think Dan Enos quarterbacks, I don't think Jaron Williams. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. So we were boring people with our college football viewing earlier about how we watched. So last night, full disclosure, I watched Florida, Georgia, and I watched the last 2 years in Jacksonville. And I watched the offensive drives of Georgia because what I wanted to see was how's Dan Enos attacking Florida. And he did exactly what I thought he did, two tight end sets, and he keyed on the linebackers in man-to-man coverage across the middle, made those throws to his tight ends. I think we're going to see a pretty good bit of that on Saturday because I don't think Miami can block Florida. So if you can't block somebody, you have two options really. You can throw screens. You can get the ball quick to the outside, play underneath, which I think they will do, but I don't know how much success they'll have. And then you can go across the middle to the tight ends. And when you get those linebackers in one-on-one coverage, John, that's an easy throw for a quarterback to make across the middle. So Brevin Jordan and Will Mallory, I think they're going to have big games at tight end for Miami. I really do. I think that's a key matchup to watch in this game for the Miami offense. And then they got to run the football. And we know Miami's got some backs. I was a little shocked that Lorenzo Lingard is not in the too deep on the depth chart for Miami. DJ Dallas is going to be your guy. DJ's a fast running back. I want to see how physical he can be. I feel like at times he's not as physical as you really want your marquee running back to be. But we'll see how he gets across with that. But you follow up on that. What do you think about the offense Dan Enos is going to trot out against Florida?
Well, I think you're correct in your assessment about the tight ends, Will Mallory and Brevin Jordan, getting their share of touches. I'm interested to see how much yards they get after the catch, which is, to me, is always a key component with the tight end. DJ Dallas, to me, needs to be that guy, that feature guy, and he needs to have a successful game. He needs to move the change. He needs to get some chunk yards here and there for this offense to be successful and for Jaron Williams to calm down. His nerves are going to be, he may look as cool as can be out there, but internally, things are flying around him and he doesn't know how to control it. He's in a big time atmosphere. That stadium is going to be packed. There's going to be a lot of distractions around him. Being able to hand it off to DJ Dallas and make those short, high percentage throws to your tight ends, that's going to calm them down. If they're successful with that, then I think Dan Enos' offense will be in full tilt. Those are big keys for Miami, and we need to see that at least in the first 2, perhaps 3 series of the game.
One thing that really concerns me about Miami's offense, and this is why I think they're going to try to get the ball out so quick, they got 2 freshmen starting on the offensive line at both tackle spots in this game. And one of them is left tackle Zion Nelson. He's a true freshman. So you're playing a top 10 defense in college football, a Todd Grantham defense that's very aggressive. Todd Grantham likes to send pressure. He likes to mix up his front and rotate guys pre-snap. Right. And you've got 2 freshmen bookending your tackle spots on the offensive line. That really worries me. And that's why I think we're going to see a lot of quick passes in this game, John.
Defensively, though, as we flip over to Florida a little bit, you mentioned how physical they are. Let's talk about Miami going up against the Florida offense, because Miami's defense is as good as advertised, especially those linebackers. And I think it's really going to limit the athleticism of Felipe Franks.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Look, we said it in our ACC preview. Miami, to me, is the best linebacking core in the ACC, and that is including Clemson. When you take Michael Pigney, Shaquille Quarterman, and even Romeo Finley, who has made some plays, he's kind of the last guy you ever think of. Most people don't even know who he is. Those 3 guys make a great tandem at linebacker. And or a trio, I guess. 3 would be a trio.
Yeah, 3 would be a trio.
A 3-man tandem. I just made a new term here.
That's the Alabama education right there.
Roll Tide. So those linebackers don't take a back step to anybody in this conference. And I think if I'm Florida, okay, let's flip the script a little bit. We know Miami's linebackers are dominant. We know Manny Diaz is very overly aggressive at times. He lives for the big defensive play, sometimes to a fault because he gives up the big play. I think if I'm playing this Miami defense, if I'm Florida, I'm running right at those linebackers. I'm running right at Quarterman. I'm running right at Pigney, because Pigney and Quarterman, they do such a good job of chasing down running backs. When you go laterally against those guys, their closing speed is some of the best in college football. It's hard to outflank those linebackers in coverage. I think you got to keep them on the back foot. I think you got to run right at them, John. I think that's the best way to attack this Miami defense. And then when you look at the passing game, same way. They're going to do a lot of underneath. Their offensive line also has some questions questions. They're more experienced than Miami's offensive line, but there's still a lot of doubt on the Florida offensive line.
And I think it's a weak point, too.
Yeah, and Manny Diaz is going to be sending, everything but the kitchen sink at you every snap in pass coverage. So you got to get the ball out quick. And I think a lot of tunnel screens will be seen this week. I think a lot of, slants across the middle will probably be ran, especially early in this game, to make sure those linebackers are staying at home.
Yep.
Again, I think this is a game of playing underneath and just wearing down the defenses. Both these offenses, and I could be wrong, maybe they're going to come out and spread sideline to sideline, and they're going to art browse it and throw all over God's green earth. But I think this is going to be two teams trying to wear down the opponent defense, and who wears down first.
The key word you said at the end, wears down first, because as well as I do, it's Orlando in late August. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. These guys have put in their practices. There's always that breakdown during practice. Now, I know with the advent of the indoor facilities, they've been able to get Miami and Florida get their work done without having to worry about the heat. Then again, that might affect this team, both teams, on Saturday night, especially with a packed house. Yeah. So we've been breaking down who guys we think are going to be big. There's going to be a third or fourth stringer out there that's going to be fresh coming in the fourth quarter that might be the difference of the game because of the heat and humidity.
Well, and obviously Florida has the advantage in the depth chart, which is why, I know we're not at our pick yet, but why Florida's my pick to win this game, because they do.
Oh, you jumped the gun.
Sorry, spoiler alert. They do have the depth in this game, and that's what the disadvantage for Miami is. Miami's going to have to be hanging on late in this game in the third quarter to try and stay fresh. One way they can do that, though, is week one, there's a lot of turnovers that can be made,
right.
And you don't want to sit back and be too complacent and just keep waiting on that turnover that never happens, or keep waiting on that mistake that never happens. But I do think that there are a lot of opportunities for turnovers in this game, and hidden yardage also. It's the game one. You're going to have some false starts. You're going to have, some formations called by the offense from the sideline where a slot man is supposed to be off the line, but he's on the line of scrimmage, and you got too many men in the backfield or too many men on the line of scrimmage. You're going to have those types of penalties. You got to be the one that's taking advantage of those and win those hidden yardage battles, because in a game with two really good defenses like this, that's really going to matter week one. And if you're Miami looking for the upset with a freshman quarterback, you need all of that you can get.
So college football is all about atmosphere, the fan experience. This game is at Orlando. How do you feel that atmosphere is going to be like? Packed house? Typical in-state rivalry kind of feel?
That's a really good question. It's now, not being in Florida and just kind of taking an outside view looking in, it's hard to make a true assessment, but I feel like it's more of a December 28th bowl game feel, honestly. Because, and here's why I say that, that's no disrespect.
I get it.
Florida has high expectations this year. Florida is the bell cow. They have high expectations. Miami fans, I don't think really have a lot of expectation for this game. I think they want to see a good performance. I think they want something to be excited about and feel good about. But I don't think Miami's coming into this game feeling like this is a live and die moment. If they lose, their season just goes in the trash can.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the feel. So I don't think it'll be very hostile. I think it'll be loud, and I think the fans will be there and be excited. But I bet pregame it's actually going to be pretty friendly for the most part, because I don't think there's a lot of intensity there for both sides. Now, by midnight Saturday night, if Miami wins that game, that's going to be a different story, because Florida fans are going to be jumping off the ship, and Miami fans are going to start throwing up the U's and be thinking of conference titles. Mm-hmm. So the narrative could change by midnight, and it'll be a knee-jerk overreaction either way. But going into this game, Miami really doesn't have a lot of pressure, I don't think.
So they're playing with house money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a reverse of their opener last year. They were the team last year with all the pressure on them. They were the team that this is a make and break game, and people were ready to fire Ed Orgeron before they even kicked the ball off. You know, LSU, we were just waiting on them to crumble. Mm-hmm. And after that one game, the entire narrative changed for both teams. So that Miami now is in the opposite role. They are playing with house money. They have no pressure, and I think because of that, they'll be pretty loose. And I think that they'll play that way. They're coaching that way. I mean, you've got 3 freshmen on the offense starting against Florida on a nationally televised game. That shows you how confident and loose his coaching staff is.
Well, a lot of newness there, and it should be fun to watch. You brought up a good point about expectations with fans. It's something that a friend of the show, Bill Shanks, and I talked about on his show on Tuesday about new coaches coming in. Why have high expectations? I realize it's a program that's won before, but you really don't need to come in with high expectations. Now, he used this Georgia comparison about Kirby Smart.
As he always does.
As he always does. But I thought it was a good comparison. Okay, time to make our picks. You jumped the gun. You're saying Florida wins this one.
Yeah, I like Florida to win this game. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think a low-scoring game mostly. But the difference to me is going to be the attrition. I think Felipe Franks does enough in the passing game, doesn't make any mistakes, and maybe even tucks the ball and runs for a 30 or 40-yard breakaway run late in the third quarter that kind of opens this game up. And I think LaMichael Pirine is going to be key in this game. I think you can use him to wear down this Miami defense. I'm going to go 24-10, somewhere in there, maybe 27-10,
okay.
27-13. I see this being about a 14-point game, closer than the final score, but I think at the end Miami just kind of runs out of gas.
Okay, well, first games of the years are always it's the biggest crapshoot in sports. College football, week 1 or week 0 here. We'll say first game of the year. And because of that, I'm going to go with Miami because of the things we talked about earlier, getting Jaron Williams comfortable. I think Dan Enos is really good about that with his quarterbacks. I look at that receiving core in Miami. I think KJ Osborne, he's my pick to click.
Okay.
To use a baseball term.
Yes.
Because he was an all-MAC receiver at Buffalo, graduated out and transferred to Miami. I think he's an unknown commodity because I think when you got guys like Jeff Thomas and D. Wiggins, who are known commodities pretty much.
Yeah.
You got a kid that did really well in the group of 5, getting his shot in the Power 5. I think he might be the pick to click.
I like it. And that's a key battle we didn't talk about, the Miami receivers and the Florida secondary. It's going to be a fun battle to watch.
Right.
I mean, it really will be.
So I agree with you about LaMichael Pirine. I think he's poised to have a pretty good game. But I think those Miami linebackers are so good against the run and so good at putting pressure on Felipe Franks and limiting his athleticism that I think it's a very close game. I think it's a 24-21 type of game. Attrition is huge in the fourth quarter. But I'm going to go with Miami in this one. I don't think you want to put anything on the line for this one, do you?
No, Bess, but I was thinking of a topic, not to get too off kilter, but if Miami wins this game, we're going to be talking next week about Florida's in trouble and disarray, and there's going to be all these articles and knee-jerk reactions.
This your tease?
Yeah, and I know that there's no. I haven't done any research on this, so we're just having a conversation right now.
Right, that's what we do.
How much stock do you put in that? Because if you think back, I mean, there are some examples. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
So Florida State 2 years ago when they kicked off against Alabama.
Yeah.
And I know they lost their head coach, but fans to this day will say after that game they were toast. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you really believe that? Do you really think Florida State would have been a 9-win team if they would have lost by a touchdown to Alabama? Or if, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
How much do you really put, like, teams look really bad in week 1 and then they tank, but were they going to tank anyway? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because fans love to say week 1 ruins their season.
I totally get that, but let's put it this way. Alabama put a beating on that Florida State team because that was so hyped. And then they rubbed salt in the wound by DeAndre Francois getting injured. And I think that just added fuel to the fire. Like, oh, we're done. And then it was a weird season for Florida State because they had the hurricane come through. The La Monroe game was suspended, and it was like another 3 weeks before they played another game, and they came out flat with a true freshman quarterback. So there were a lot of weird situations that happened in that season for Florida State. But I get what you're saying.
Okay, so what about, and not to stick with Alabama, I can pick another example, but what about Louisville last year? If Louisville doesn't play Alabama and just get embarrassed week one, do they have the abysmal dumpster fire season still? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think not as bad as it was, but I think it instead of a slow bleed, it would have been more of a slow bleed. What happened last year, they just gashed open a wound on Louisville that just got infected throughout the rest of the year, and we know how it ended. There were a lot of internal issues in that locker room and in that facility nobody knew about that came to light after Bobby Petrino left.
I mean, I'm not trying to bog us down, but it's just an interesting thought because fans will be saying that. Fans next week will say our season's done.
Yeah.
We're going to lose the locker room. And there are examples of that. But there's also examples, Texas lost to Maryland last year again to start the season.
Yeah.
They ended up
College Park.
Okay. The year everybody loves to talk about App State beating Michigan. People forget Michigan still had a pretty good year that year. It's not like they barely made a bowl.
I'm going to bog you down a little more here on that Florida aspect because if they do lose to Miami, it's another 2 weeks before they play Tennessee Martin. Do you have to guard against festering that bad feeling?
Possibly, but I mean, you're playing Tennessee Martin.
I know that.
You're playing a former Vol quarterback, T. Martin, so you should be fine. Now they have Tennessee after that, so they'll have to be getting ready and prepping them.
Kentucky in between.
Oh, Kentucky in between. Okay, well, even that game,
that's
a good way to kind of step into it. But yeah, I mean, they'll be hearing it. But Dan Mullen's kind of guy that. Dan Mullen, I don't think he will turn that into a positive.
Yeah,
he's the kind of coach, when things are down and sour and all, he'll go in there and throw some papers on the table and go, media says we're dead and buried, guys. Put your helmets in the buckets and let's just quit the damn season. He's that kind of guy, and he will use that as motivation. So I wouldn't be worried about him losing the team, but it will be 2 weeks worth of media saying Florida's not what we thought we were after one game of football.
Now, see, if you listen to our podcast, not only do we break down a number of games, we take it to the next degree and talk about how this is going to affect the fan bases and how this is going to affect the next week. We've got everything covered here on the College Football Debrief. We've got a little more to talk about before we wrap it up. When we come back, we're going to talk about the FCS season kicking off and some of our thoughts about that level of football when the College Football Debrief continues after this.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. All you got to do, install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, lacrosse. Maybe I can get John to do a CFL podcast. What are you waiting for? Let's get this done. Get the OSG Sports app today.
Welcome back. John Wilkerson, Anthony Goldman on the College Football Debrief inside the padded room in the college football capital of the world, ATLGA. And we broke down Florida and Miami, which kicks off on Saturday. Preceding that game is the FCS kickoff between Youngstown State and Stanford, the Penguins and the Bulldogs. And first of all, let's hear from the head coaches. Here's Youngstown State head coach Bo Pelini.
Kids are excited. I mean, it's going down there. It's almost a home game, for Stanford, and going down there on the road. And I think our guys are sick of hitting each other and are looking forward to, the competition and see where this football team is. I think we've made some progress. We're like anybody at this time of year. There's some unknowns. That it's obviously like everybody early in the year, it's a work in progress. But kids are working hard. They're making progress each day, and we're looking forward to Saturday.
Pretty good matchup between two really good programs in the FCS.
And two really different philosophies of coaching by those two as well. Chris Hatcher is more of a spread guy. I've always thought Chris Hatcher kind of got a raw deal. He was at Georgia Southern, had a lot of offers to be an offense coordinator. A lot of people don't know this, but he was almost the OC at Alabama, and he ended up not taking the job. And I think he probably regrets that in some ways, but look, he's a good offensive mind. I like Chris Hatcher, and then Bo Pelini's going to beat you up and bloody your nose. So it should be two teams that are going to be fighting in the playoff time to keep moving up, and this could be a game a lot of people look back on for positioning. And maybe, as we said in the last block, fans will be. You think Samford fans will be overreacting and throwing their season in the dumpster if they lose this game, John?
Well, it's almost a home game for Samford.
Yeah, it's weird that they're the away team, but it's a neutral site game in Montgomery. That's I don't know what else to say. That is it at the Crampton Bowl? Is that where it is?
I believe so. Yes,
at the Crampton Bowl. So. Yeah, well, I mean, that's what, like an hour and 40-minute drive from Samford, I would say. Hour 20, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they got to travel, so I guess. But, yeah, it is weird that it's a neutral site game in Montgomery. But
And the other thing, when you listen to our podcast, we try to give attention to the FCS level. It's really good football. North Dakota State has been, for the last 10 years, the Alabama of the FCS level. The Missouri Valley Conference is pretty much the SEC, that level, which happens to be where my alma mater is, Missouri State University, and they're picked to finish last. But, I mean, it's a good brand of football.
It is, and I know that, you have helped grow my knowledge of FCS and even Division II and Division III, and you're not going to believe this, but I swear to God this happened this morning. I'm driving into work, and I'm listening to College Football Podcast, and I got an inkling to hear something. So guess what I pulled up on YouTube and started listening to? The Ballad of the Monin Bell. How about that? Honest to God, listen to it on the way to work this morning. If you don't know what we're talking about, just go Google.
It's playing in the background right now.
Just go, listen to Ballad of the Monin Bell. If that doesn't get you ready for college football, I can't help you.
Which reminds me that we'll have an offshoot of our podcast known as the College Football Rivalry and Trophy Game Show, which we debuted last year, and we're going to keep that going this year as well. Anthony will join me on those, as well as John Nelson and Phil Cantor, and we hope to have some compelling interviews as we did last year. I remember the guy we had on from the South Dakota School of Mines and finding out how that rivalry with Black Hills State was one of the oldest rivalries in college football.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite interviews, and I'm going to try to see if I can find more songs too, because if we can get more Ballad of the Monin Bells, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Let's talk about Arizona traveling out to Hawaii to take on the Warriors. This game probably won't be very close. There's going to be a lot of points in this game, but the two things I want to see are both at the quarterback spot. I want to see, what does Khalil Tate in 2019 look like with Kevin Sumlin? Does Khalil Tate actually be Khalil Tate? Or does he try to be something that he's not, which is what they tried to do with him last year? I thought it was interesting in the offseason that when Kevin Sumlin talked about Khalil Tate, he kind of blamed Khalil Tate for not being Khalil Tate, because he said that Khalil Tate wanted to be something different and we were just doing what he wanted. Well, you're the damn coach. So coach him the way he's supposed to be played. Use your talent to its best ability. Give your team a chance to win. That was a stupid response. But I want to see what they're going to do with Khalil Tate. And the other thing I want to see, John, is, randomly enough, the backup quarterback spot at Arizona. And here's why. So if this game, and it may not, I mean, I don't think Arizona's going to blow out Hawaii, because Hawaii's going to score a lot of points. But if this game does get to where it's getting out of hand, the backup quarterback right now is Rhett Rodriguez, which is Rich Rod's son. He's been at Arizona for a little while, knows the system. But right under him is a true freshman, Grant Gunnell. Grant Gunnell is a true freshman. He was a four-star quarterback at a St. Pius High School in Houston. Mm-hmm. He was a kid that Chad Morris was just dying to get. Chad Morris spent days upon days down in Houston trying to get Grant Gunnell to come to Fayetteville. And I think if Grant Gunnell would have went to Fayetteville, he would have a really good shot right now of battling for the starting job at Arkansas. Going to Arizona was an interesting move, and I want to see what they're going to do with Gunnell, because he's such a different quarterback than what they have with Khalil Tate. He can be a great pocket passer and he has NFL potential. Will he get a chance to play this year? And is Rhett Rodriguez just an emergency backup case if there was an injury? I want to see how that plays out.
I think this is going to be a very difficult game for Arizona. A, the travel issues going out to Honolulu. B, you look at this Hawaii team. They're coming off a 8-6 season last year. I've really liked Nick Rolovich and what he's done there as far as building that program. You look at all the returning starters, including quarterback Cole McDonald.
Yeah,
and JoJo Ward and Cedric Boyd are probably at the group of 5 level, probably one of the better duos of receivers out there. They're going to put points on the board. I'm a little worried about that Arizona defense going up against such a good, experienced offense, and practically everybody's back from that offensive line. So I think this is going to be a very difficult, rough game for Arizona to get this win over Hawaii. And if the Rainbow Warriors win this one, I think people are going to start. I know you and I will. We'll start looking over at the Hawaiian Islands and looking at this program and thinking, they're a secret out there. They're a pretty good secret out in the group of 5, and we need to start paying attention to what's going on the Hawaiian Islands.
Well, and I just kind of defended or buried the media, if you will, for overreacting on games. If Hawaii wins this game, we will be overreacting about Kevin Sumlin at Arizona. There's no doubt about that.
And coming off the 5-7 season, I mean,
exactly.
And I know that fan base, having lived out there, it's going to be very much what you would see if Auburn loses to Oregon or if Florida loses to Miami.
There hasn't been a lot to be excited about with Kevin Sumlin. I mean, there really hasn't been.
No.
You mentioned Cole McDonald, by the way. One thing I love about him, 36 touchdowns last year, only 10 picks. And when I think Hawaii, and maybe this is biased to me, I think lots of touchdowns, but also high risk, high reward. I think of Timmy Chang throwing for 85 touchdowns and 75 interceptions, and same with Colt Brennan. So Cole McDonald picks his spots. He's not a turnover machine. J.J. Taylor, the Arizona running back, to me is the difference in this game. I think Hawaii's going to score, but J.J. Taylor can run the ball. He can keep the ball on the ground, play a little possession for him, keep away. I think this is like a 45-35 type game, 42-52, 7-10 points, high 40s in the score.
I think you bring up a good point about J.J. Taylor because last year Hawaii was ranked 103rd in the country against the run. Although that defense has got some nice parts to it, against the run they're seriously lacking, and they do give up a lot of points. When you got a returning offense, a guy like Cole McDonald, the potential to outscore people is there. And again, the travel issues that Hawaii's going to have to face going out there to the Hawaiian Islands. I like Arizona in this game, but I think they're going to be extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, I do too. It should be good viewing. It should be a fun game to watch to kind of cap off a tease of week 0 to get you ready for week 1.
We're finally being able to watch games.
Yes, we are. We don't have to watch old games anymore.
Speak for yourself. I might watch a few before we get started.
Yeah, you'll definitely still watch old games. I'll get a text from John, by the way, like on a Saturday morning, like 8 a.m. Just rewatched the 82 Cotton Bowl. You need to check this out. It's on YouTube right now. So I will be preparing to get those texts still coming in.
Do you ever look that game up and see what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, every time. Every time.
Liar. Well, I hope you enjoyed our podcast on the College Football Debrief as we break down Florida and Miami and Hawaii and Arizona and Youngstown State and Stanford. And we'll be doing this next week, so we hope you tune in. So for Anthony Goldman, I'm John Wilkerson. So long, everyone.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Rock at the What's Up Falcons podcast, and I'm joined with my boys. My boys in the house. Where you at?
Yeah. What up?
Oh, gee, and we have Q, and we have Hoop in the house.
Q's here, the most beloved guy in all of sports entertainment.
Indeed. Hey, y'all, we want to thank everyone for listening to us, and if you want to listen to some great Falcons information, check us out on the What's Up Falcons podcast. Right, fellas?
Right. Sir. Hey, we here every week, baby.
We keeping it real, so check us out there on Twitter. Holla. Peace.
Subscribe to the What's Up Falcons podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Listen to the What's Up Falcons podcast at whatsupfalcons.com.
College football fans, check out the College Football Debrief. Here's a sample of what you get.
You start looking at the dang schedules of who all these teams have played. Alabama's resume is not very impressive. Now, they beat the crap out of people. There's no doubt about that. But, who have they played? So it makes you wonder, all right, Georgia, push them. What are they going to do? When you push the bully in your neighborhood, what are they going to do to come back to you?
I think I caught you in a fired up mood this time.
You do. You got me, man. I'm ready. I'm ready for Saturday at 4 o'clock. Let's go.
You can catch the College Football Debrief on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Check out the College Football Debrief on the OSG Podcasting Network.